The Zephyrian High Command had been thorough in their assessment. For 3 cycles, their reconnaissance vessels had observed Earth from the outer system, cataloging humanity's military capabilities with scientific precision. Their conclusion was unanimous. These soft-skinned bipeds posed no threat to the galactic hegemony. They send their youngest to fight, Commander Vextal reported to the War Council, his crystalline form pulsing with amused violet light. Barely past their reproductive maturity, no experience, no wisdom, their soldiers averaged 25 solar cycles of age. The Council's approval rippled through their shared consciousness like a satisfied purr. In their civilization, only the eldest and most experienced were deemed worthy of combat. Warriors didn't even begin training until their 100th cycle, and true battle commanders weren't considered ready until their 3rd century. Primitives, Elder Kithmore's ancient voice resonated through their neural link. They waste their youth on warfare and leave their elders to tend gardens and raise offspring. No wonder they've never expanded beyond their single world. The invasion began at dawn on a Tuesday. 15 Zephyrian dreadnoughts descended through Earth's atmosphere, their dark hulls bristling with plasma cannons and void missiles. They had chosen their landing zones strategically, suburban neighborhoods where resistance would be minimal, and the soft humans could be processed efficiently. The first ship touched down in Millfield, a quiet retirement community in Ohio. Commander Vexital stepped onto the alien soil, his scanner already identifying the nearest human settlements. The reading showed clusters of life forms, but curiously, very few registered as combat-capable by their standards. Most were beyond their species' prime fighting age. "Acceptable," he murmured, signaling his troops forward. "Begin pacification protocol." The Zephyrian soldiers advanced through the manicured streets, their exoskeletons gleaming in the morning sun. They expected cowering. They expected surrender. They expected the weak elderly to flee before their superior might. Instead, they met Dorothy Chen. The 78-year-old former Marine drill instructor stepped out of her house wearing a bathrobe and holding a cup of coffee. She looked at the 8-foot-tall alien warriors with the same expression she'd once reserved for particularly disappointing recruits. "You boys are on my lawn," she said calmly. The lead soldier's translator crackled as it processed her words. When he understood the meaning, he let out what his species considered laughter, a sound like grinding metal. "Surrender, Aged One," he commanded. "Your warriors are not here to protect you." Dorothy took a careful sip of her coffee and set the cup down on her porch railing. "Warriors?" she asked, stretching her back with an audible crack. "Son, who do you think raised those warriors?" What happened next would be discussed in Zephyrian military academies for generations to come. Dorothy Chen had survived Kandahar, raised 4 children, buried a husband, and organized her neighborhood's disaster response for 30 years. The alien soldier's plasma rifle was impressive, but it wasn't more terrifying than a teenager with a motorcycle or a toddler with a crayon near white walls. She moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent decades solving problems under pressure. The garden hose became a tripline. The porch railing became leverage for a move that sent the lead soldier tumbling into her prize-winning roses. The coffee mug, thrown with the accuracy of a woman who had once pitched softball in a semi-professional league, struck the second soldier's weapon with enough force to send it spinning away. "Gladys!" she bellowed across the street. "Bring your bridge club!"
"We've got company!"
Gladys Morrison, 81 and former head nurse at Millfield General, emerged from her house carrying what appeared to be a first aid kit, but contained items that would have made a Navy SEAL weep with joy. Behind her came the Tuesday Morning Bridge Club. 4 women whose combined age exceeded 3 centuries and whose combined experience included military service, emergency medicine, disaster relief, community organization, and the kind of strategic thinking that comes from managing multiple generations of family drama. The Zephyrians had trained to fight soldiers. They had not trained to fight a coordinated unit of grandmothers who had decades of experience working together, who knew every inch of their neighborhood, and who had been preparing for various apocalypses since the Cold War. Margaret Washington had been hoarding medical supplies since Y2K. Ruth Goldberg had maintained an extensive tool collection that would make a hardware store jealous. Helen Torres had been the plant manager at a chemical facility for 30 years and knew exactly what household products became dangerous when combined. And Dorothy's basement contained enough preserved food and emergency equipment to supply a small army. But it wasn't their equipment that turned the tide. It was their mindset. These women had spent their entire lives being underestimated. They had fought for equality in the workplace, raised families during economic uncertainty, and kept their communities running through countless crises. They had learned patience, planning, and the art of making do with what they had. Most importantly, they had something the young soldiers the aliens expected to face didn't. They had absolutely nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. By noon, the invasion of Millfield had become a rout. The Zephyrians found themselves trapped in a suburban maze where every street corner held an ambush, every house was a fortress, and every elderly resident was part of a coordinated resistance network that operated with the efficiency of a military unit and the ruthlessness of people protecting their grandchildren. Commander Vextal, nursing injuries from an encounter with what humans called a neighborhood watch captain, broadcast an emergency signal to his fleet. "Abort mission," he transmitted, his earlier confidence replaced by something approaching awe. "We have made a critical error in our intelligence assessment." "Explain," came Elder Kithmore's reply. "We assumed their warriors were young because we observed young soldiers in their conflicts," Vextal reported, watching as another of his soldiers was efficiently captured by a woman, wielding what appeared to be kitchen utensils, and several decades of experience dealing with unruly grandchildren. "We failed to understand their species' strategy." "Which is?" Commander Vextal looked out at the suburban street where the Tuesday Morning Bridge Club was efficiently organizing the processing of prisoners, distributing medical aid, and planning the community's next defensive phase, all while maintaining a running commentary about whose turn it was to host next week's meeting. "They don't send their warriors to fight wars," he said slowly. "They send their warriors to make more warriors. Then they keep the warriors at home to protect them." The Zephyrian fleet departed that afternoon, leaving behind a report that would fundamentally change how the galactic hegemony viewed Earth. The assessment now included a warning label that every species in the galaxy would eventually learn to respect. Humanity's most dangerous combatants are not their soldiers. They are the ones who raise their soldiers. And in Millfield, Ohio, the Tuesday Morning Bridge Club went back to their weekly game, though they did decide to keep the emergency supplies a little more accessible. After all, you never knew when unexpected company might drop by.